Oh yeah, we're here. Hi Ben, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Still trying to recover from that Lakers disaster on Tuesday night, but doing okay. I know it's been a couple days. Everybody else probably moved on a little bit more quickly than I did, but being
Yeah.
here in LA and watching these guys on, pretty close to a night-to-night basis, not the start people were looking for. But on the flip side, Golden State looked like they're ready to run it back and try to repeat and become the first team to repeat since they did it like 5 years ago. So a lot going on. I think your Raptors won opening night too, right? So that must have been
Yes, we
exciting.
did. That was exciting. It was a very exciting finish.
Well, it's
Um,
just so nice to have games going on like every single spot. There was like 10 games on Wednesday night, and they're all pretty good. So I'm juiced up, put it that way.
yeah, no, I am too. And I think for you, when you say you're still recovering from Tuesday, I mean, you were there in person. So it's different for you than it is for the rest of us. Like, we're following that news cycle. We're already like, okay, the Lakers are done. What's next? But you're like, no, I have to go to these Laker games all
No,
season and
it's
watch this
trauma.
happen in real time.
Yeah, it's trauma. It's like, yeah, you just watched a car crash. It's going to take you a day or two to like unwind from that, right? No, I mean, what did go well for them in that particular game, right? Like no shooting whatsoever to the point where LeBron's just calling out the entire roster. Russell Westbrook comes up with some weird hamstring injury excuse about how if he comes off the bench, he can't get warm enough, and therefore he's going to get injured if they try to bench him.
Oh
So
my
it's
god.
like this implicit threat that he has to start. Anthony Davis actually plays really well, but it doesn't matter because they're down by 27 points in the third quarter. Golden State's not even playing great. I would say it was sort of like a B effort from the Warriors, at least until the end, and it still was completely one-sided. Patrick Beverley, their big new addition, gave them nothing. I mean, they have so many non-starter quality players that Darvin Ham didn't even want to announce the starting lineup before the first game of the season because he really has two starters on his team, LeBron and AD. I mean, what could have gone worse, I guess, in this, other than injury, what really could have gone worse for the Lakers? So we'll see if they panic. I think it's a huge question here coming up in the first like month or two of the season is like, do they just start throwing draft picks out the window because they hate their lives so much? It's hard to stay disciplined after losses like that.
Yeah, well, that was one of my questions for you because you captured, well, you and maybe a few other reporters that were there captured LeBron talking about the lack of lasers, quote unquote, on his team after their very first game. And
Right.
I was like, man, for LeBron to just go after his teammates like that after just one game. And so I thought I'd ask you as a fun question, because everybody's talking about, the demise of this Lakers. Like, is there any kind of path to their redemption, like, at all
Nope.
that you
No,
see?
they're done.
None at all.
They're well, the thing I loved about the lack of lasers quote is it really sets up one of the great new tongue twisters of our time. So it's LeBron's Los Angeles Lakers lost because they lack a lot of lasers. Try to say that 5 times fast. It's just like unbelievable wordplay from LeBron about the lack of lasers, but he's completely right. I mean, they were 2 for their first 20 on three-pointers. Like that's terrible. You don't have to even be a calculus student to know that's 10%. Not good. And no matter who they put out there, right? No matter what lineup they construct, they don't have great shooting because Russ, AD, and now LeBron himself are not really that good of three-point shooters. LeBron takes a lot of threes. He's kind of moved into that stage of his career where he settles for a lot of threes. And when he's not hitting, the offense just stagnates so much because everybody's standing around watching and assuming he's going to pull up and take shots. So to me, the offense was actually the bigger deal than their defense. They had a lot of defensive problems last year too. I thought they were okay on that side. I mean, they didn't really slow down the Warriors that much, but the offense was so bad, so choppy, so ugly that it feels, basically unfixable. Now, I think the natural knee-jerk reaction is we'll go trade for like a Buddy Hield and he could be your shooter. I mean, Buddy Hield has been one of those guys who sounds good in theory and has really done nothing in his NBA career the entire way. So he's not going to be changing this formula. I just think when you're looking at the Western Conference, you've got a heck of a lot of younger teams, more athletic teams, teams with better chemistry, and a lot of teams with better shooting. And you're not going to be able to overcome all of those things just because you've got that name Lakers on your jersey. And last point with them, this is okay. I understand people like freak out and they just can't believe, oh, the Lakers are this travesty. Like LeBron is about to turn 38. That is not winning time in the NBA, right? Winning time is like late 20s, early 30s. This was bound to
Mhm.
happen. And I really think the best thing that could happen in this entire NBA season is for everyone who just assumes LeBron's going to be like one of the very best players for the rest of his for the rest of time, right? He's going to be one of the top 3 NBA players until he's 100 years old. To just scale those thoughts back, to understand that even LeBron is human and he's going to age, and to just take the pressure off this group. They're not contenders. They'll be lucky if they make the play-in. I don't think they're actually going to make it. And just chill out. That's my message to everybody after one game. I don't even think that qualifies as an overreaction because we watched the exact same story last year, didn't we?
We absolutely did. And then they didn't really make any changes this offseason. Not that they had a ton of options, right? I mean, there was a Kyrie Irving flirtation that was rumored to have happened, but really,
Well, he looked great on opening night, didn't he? If you need somebody to dribble in circles and miss a 15-foot jumper, Kyrie is your guy. I mean, unbelievable. His laser wasn't dialed in either against the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean, Kyrie's one of these guys, too. I think people need to accept what stage of his career he's at. I mean, this is not 2016 Kyrie scoring 40-40, in the finals, rather, and winning a title and hitting a big shot. I mean, this guy's trying to find himself. I saw all sorts of comments from him coming into the season, how I'm going to get serious. I've got to do this. I think he said his daughter was challenging him or something along those lines. Like, this is the year he's got to kind of shape up. I mean, there was like 4 or 5 Pelicans players who played better than Kyrie did in the opener, and they got absolutely blown out on their home court. No defensive answers whatsoever for Zion Williamson. The Nets, to me, they look a little bit old. They look a little bit soft. They don't look super interested in playing defense, and I'm not sure they solved any of their problems either. Maybe this is the developing theme. If you're in denial about your flaws as a basketball team and you just try to run it back, that will not go well for you. And I think the Lakers and the Nets have figured that out. And I think we're on the countdown watch already for how long until Steve Nash is kind of the person who takes the blame here.
Yeah, I think those two teams are going to satisfy what I would consider a morbid curiosity. That's
Right.
the best way to put that. I want to ask you, because you cover the whole NBA, but you attend a lot of both Lakers and Clippers games as a result. Is there a massive difference between the vibe of those two teams? Now, obviously, like, one team has like expectations and the other one doesn't, not realistic ones at least, but just in terms of like the fandom, just going into the arena itself, like, how different is it for you?
Well, at the Lakers games, I mean, you have the very glitzy and glamoury Lakers girls. And at the Clippers game, you've got a giant bird named Chuck the Condor who will rub his body on you at basically any moment. So I think that probably summarizes.
There's no Clippers. There's no Clippers cheerleaders.
Oh, no, they have everything you could possibly want. So when Steve Ballmer bought the Clippers, his whole idea was he wanted to engage fans the entire time. They wouldn't leave their seats, so they become kind of more diehard fans, and so they like really cheer louder and give the Clippers a home court advantage, because for years they were known as being this quiet fan base where like other teams would come and buy the tickets, and sort of they didn't really have a home court advantage. So he has a stunt team, a dance team, a cheerleading team. He's got bazookas that shoot hot dogs into the stands. He's got T-shirt cannons. He's got Chuck the Condor. Chuck the Condor is the mascot. It also has a secondary mascot. I don't know the secondary bird in the mascot's name, but he shows up every once in a while. And then every year on Chuck the Condor's birthday, they pay like a lot of money to bring in like 15 or 20 other mascots to celebrate Chuck the Condor's birthday during one of the games. So you'll see like half of the NBA's mascots. They've all been put up at like really nice hotels in LA, flown in and everything like that, solely to celebrate the mascot's birthday. So it's a very family-friendly environment. They're still trying to cultivate the diehard Clippers fan. I think the problem for them these last couple of years is they've been really good, but their stars have been in and out. And so you don't necessarily have that strong connection between the fan base and a Kawhi Leonard, because he's not really out there on the court a lot. Now, the kind of players that the fans rally around, it's like the Patrick Beverley types, right?
Right.
When he played for the Clippers, where he's just kind of a grinder. He's going to, dive on the floor and talk trash and give you that underdog spirit. That's really what the Clippers fans relate to. So they're still trying to completely forge that identity, but they will have their own building in a couple of years. They're moving out to Inglewood, and I think that's going to help them a lot because they're just in the Lakers' shadow. I mean, I'm sure you've heard they like put up signs above the Lakers title banners when they host their games, so nobody else can see all the Lakers wins, because obviously the Clippers don't really have any banners of their own, right? So it's a tricky spot to be in. They don't get as many A-list celebrities, but every once in a while you'll see somebody from like the TV show Silicon Valley, or they'll pay to have some rappers come show up at halftime. You'll be like, wow, that's pretty good. Like they got that guy. That's awesome. So
But
totally
they do
different.
pay them to show up, right?
Oh, I'm sure you get a big appearance fee. Yeah. I mean, I remember one playoffs, I saw Montel Jordan in like 6 different arenas. I mean, he was just playing NBA halftime like it was a tour. He was just going from like
Right.
Golden State to Boston to wherever else. So yeah, I hope somebody's covering his expenses on that. But yeah, the Lakers, it's big time celebs. You'll see Rihanna, you'll see the Kardashians every once in a while, Jack Nicholson, obviously. It's a different vibe. It's got the staged lighting, at the court, so it really feels like a movie. But when they don't play well, it just kind of feels like a bad movie. That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny what you said. Well, first of all, like I did not know about this mascot's birthday celebration. That's
Gotta
actually
get
kind of
in.
wild to me because I feel like our beloved Raptor deserves that maybe more than any other mascot in the league. Like our Raptor, I feel is the greatest mascot. Obviously, this is a biased point of view, but I do think there's a real case to be made there. But it's interesting too what you said about Kawhi, because I felt when he was here, obviously we were very grateful. We won a championship and all of that. But I did find it difficult to connect with him emotionally.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if like how many fans feel that exact way. Maybe it's a little polarizing. I did like when the whole like Kawhi and dying thing was happening, when we were desperate to try and get him to stay here for that brief moment of free agency. I did put that sign out on my window. I was like, what if he's driving by? You know what I mean? Like I did put that out there just
Oh,
in
good for
case.
you.
I was like, look, I have an apartment in a rich neighborhood. You never know. So I put that out there, but really I don't know if the fans like emotionally connected with him quite in the same way. Also, too, I felt like the Clippers were kind of using a lot of the catchphrases that came up with during his championship run here. Like, I'm a fun guy and all that. And they were just kind of rehashing that. And it's like, no, man, you got to come up with your own.
Well, they really unveiled this whole King of LA campaign in between them and like New Balance. That was the one when he first came to LA. That was like
Yeah.
LeBron versus Kawhi, is very confrontational. Didn't go well for them. LeBron wins the title in 2020, and Kawhi kind of disappears off the face of the earth for like the last 18 months. But Kawhi's comeback is one of the biggest stories in the league right now. The Clippers on
Yeah.
paper are arguably the deepest team in terms of the emotional connection. I mean, he also like lives in San Diego and basically like helicopters up for games. I mean, he pretty much does whatever he wants. So I wouldn't really say he's necessarily been embraced by LA. I think it's similar to, like Kyle Lowry was like more popular as a Raptor, right, than
Mhm.
Kawhi. Like even when they were teammates, it wasn't, people like knew Kawhi was the best player, but I don't think he was like the most popular player on the team, or even some of the younger guys. I feel like that's kind of the vibe with the Clippers too, where every once in a while Kawhi just shows up, he scores 35, it looks great. But you don't see a ton of Kawhi Leonard jerseys, not nearly as many as you would expect at these games. So even though they're in their 4th year, they're kind of still trying to feel things out just because they lost so much time with the pandemic, and because they lost so much time with his injury, which cost him really all of last season, his knee injury. So
Yeah.
it feels like a fresh start for the Clippers. They're bringing Kawhi back. Paul George missed a lot of time last year. John Wall's new. So in a way, they're a little bit reloaded, and they should be a fun story to watch this season. I mean, they should be really good on paper, and they actually share a lot of strategic and philosophical stuff with the Raptors in terms of the small ball and the interchangeable lineups, and like let's play super aggressive defense and try to force turnovers and shoot a lot of threes. Like all that stuff to me is really interesting, and we'll see if the Clippers can kind of, like you said, rip off the Raptors model and have it work for them.
I appreciate you phrasing it that way. So I put together a little fun thing for us here where I started off my email to you very dramatically. Admittedly, I said I've turned a full 180 when it comes to loyalty in relation to the NBA, right? Like teams who hold on to these struggling superstars tend to take longer to rebuild. And so I feel like there's a lot of, and I'm sure a lot of people listening agree with that. So there's a lot of talk about different franchises. Should they keep it together or should they move on? And so I picked 4 teams that I thought would be interesting to discuss. One of them is kind of an obvious keep it together. So we'll start here.
Well, hold on. This sounds to me
Oh,
like you've entered your ghosting era. So what you're saying is just like let people go, just get rid of them, just cut ties, like don't hang on.
well,
Loyalty's overrated. We gotta just, look out for self. Is that what you're saying here?
well, when I was younger, I used to be more loyal, right?
Okay.
As an NBA fan, I used to get more emotionally attached and all of that. But now that I've won a championship,
Oh, you're ruthless now. I see.
in the style that we did, yeah, I've become more ruthless now.
Okay, all right, I can
Do you
see
have
that.
an opinion on that before I get into the teams?
Well, I mean, I think that loyalty to me in the NBA, at least, it's like one of those ideals where it actually works out. It's so amazing, and like we should hold it up. But it's so rare these days. I mean, LeBron, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Russell Westbrook, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Chris Paul have all played for at least three teams since 2016. So, like, what is
Yeah,
loyalty even
that
anymore?
was nice how you listed that off right there.
Well, that was from my preview column. Still stuck in my head here.
Okay,
But
nice.
yeah, we're in this era where like loyalty, if you stay for 3 years, now all of a sudden you're like redefined as a loyal person, right? It's like Kevin Durant's trying to force a trade before he had even started his 4-year contract. Like I've never even heard of anything like that, right? So when you get the rare case of a Curry or a Jokic or a Giannis, we should celebrate those guys. But that to me, it's like now an unrealistic standard. Like we can't just go around
Mhm.
to like every young guy and say, well, Paolo Banchero, if you decide at some point you want to leave Orlando, now you're like this horrible person or whatever. Like it just, and then you flip it around the other way. If you're a team, if you're committing big, big money, like max money to players after their 32nd birthday, you can back yourself into a corner so quick, right? Like the Wizards
Right.
just paying Bradley Beal, they're going to be stuck because there's a no trade clause. That deal is going to really like just loom over them like an anvil. Or even the Chicago Bulls with Zach LaVine, giving him this giant contract, but he can't even play opening night because his knee's still hurt. That's going to just loom over their contract, their salary cap books for years and years and years. So you have to be careful, I think, both ways. And I do think in general, I'm a little bit more forgiving of both sides. If teams want to be ruthless like the Clippers and just cut ties with Blake Griffin and move forward, I mean, that's
Right.
really tough in the moment, but it obviously worked out well for the Clippers. That was the right decision to make, right? Being ruthless. And flip side, I'm not going to deny a player if he wants to try to force a trade or if he's not happy. I mean, I believe in free agency and wanting to be able to determine where you live and where you work. So I understand that, but I do think what we've learned is too much activity creates instability, and it's really hard to win with an unstable climate, right? Look at the Nets;
Right.
like they can't win big because everything keeps changing, and same thing with the Lakers too. So there is real value in loyalty. I think you will be rewarded in the long run if you have a certain degree of loyalty, more often than not. But there is such a thing as too much of a good thing, I guess.
Wow. Well, that's a very good way to put that. I put down four teams. I think some of these are more obvious than others. Do you think they should keep it together, or do you think it's time to move on? So the first one, then, is the Golden State Warriors. Now, obviously, this team, they're reigning champs, but I put this here because there's a ton of do we trade Draymond Green talk. So I thought I'd get your feedback on that.
I mean, I think from how they played on the court, it looked like they had moved past that punch to me. Jordan Poole looks
Mhm.
comfortable. Doesn't seem like he's walking on eggshells. Draymond was contributing. For this year, I would not trade him unless there's another fight. Like he just can't stop punching people. Then it's like, all right, dude, just chill out, right? But assuming that he can be on his good behavior and he's been saying all the right things, I would run it back for this year because I think they have a really good chance to win the title. I mean, their system is so good. They're so deep. I mean, Steve Kerr was talking about playing 11 guys in his normal rotation this season because they have so many guys who are good enough to like actually earn minutes. They're going to be able to really keep the minutes off of their older stars. It's going to be a huge advantage come playoff time. So I think you run forward with that. Now, next summer becomes a different question. Like if he's trying to get another big contract and you're the Warriors, you're already set to have a record payroll next year, which is bigger than your record payroll this year, which is bigger than your record payroll last year. They're going to be setting records 3 years in a row in terms of how much money they've paid in salary and luxury tax, and nobody else is even really that close. Like they're out and they're in the stratosphere by themselves. I mean, there's possible that they spend 500 million on salary and payroll and luxury taxes next year. That's just a crazy, crazy number. I mean, most teams are paying like 150 or somewhere around there, So they're just in a situation where financially it's probably going to become difficult and they're going to have to make some choices. If Draymond winds up on the cutting room floor, that wouldn't surprise me. But I would say that's a question for next summer.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And currently, I do think the Warriors very much could repeat, like you said, for the first time since they last repeated. I also think they moved on from that punch. I mean, not that I understand men or anything, but I feel like sometimes guys will just punch each other and then they become best friends somehow. You know what I mean?
Well, what it was weird, it was like they were painting it like they were already really close because I guess Draymond had been like his mentor and like his big brother, and they'd be like sitting next to each other in the locker room every single day for years because they're both from Michigan. I
Yeah.
actually wondered if that was the problem. Like, I'm a big Michigan football fan, and we've just been awesome this year. Michigan State's been terrible. Draymond was talking about, he's having a lot of tough times in his life. I mean, maybe he's just watching the Spartans play, and he just had to take out his aggression
Hmm.
on Jordan Poole, a representative of the greatest college football program in the country. That's it's a big rivalry up there. Maybe that was behind the fisticuffs. I don't know, but
It's a solid theory. I think it was more of a self-sabotaging move on
yeah.
his part, in my opinion. But yeah,
Well,
also maybe
kudos.
it's a Michigan State thing.
I mean, kudos to him. He's already spun it into content for TNT. Everything's content these days. Even your lowest moment where you're punching your
Mhm.
teammate for absolutely no reason, it has to get leaked on TNT or on TMZ rather. So, Draymond's got his hands in a lot of different things right now, and we'll see if he can balance it all. I mean, he's their X factor. Back in 2015, 2016. 2017 when they were really good, he was rock solid. I mean, other than the below the belt shot to LeBron in the 2016 finals, he was about as reliable as you can get, captaining an amazing defense and just really helping their offense get unlocked with Steph Curry. He's been a lot shakier. I mean, even last year's playoffs, it was more up and down type stuff. And this year, I think 1 year older, it could be more of the same. So to me, if they don't win the title, it's either injuries or it's Draymond. If they do, that means he's done well enough to kind of keep things going. But you look forward into the future, guys like Kuminga and Moody, are they able to fill that role? Potentially. They're not going to do everything that Draymond did, but maybe they can fill it well enough to kind of keep the Warriors in the mix. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think, I was so impressed with his defense last year, particularly against Jokic in that first round. I thought he was just putting on a full-on masterclass in defense during that. And I think they've done, even though it's cost them a lot of money, they've done such a great job finding younger players to continue to build around this core. And like you said, like taking the minutes off of them and stuff like that. I feel like they're in position to keep doing that long term. And I feel like Draymond could almost have like a Marc Gasol role the way he did with the Raptors during their championship season, where it's like, yes, you start, but it's primarily a defensive role. You're not scoring more than 10 points a game. And, the offensive load is on everyone else. And I think like he could, if he is willing, could transition into that type of a role and still keep this core alive. Yeah.
Totally. The problem is he doesn't want Marcus Gasol money though. Draymond wants one more payday, and that's
Yeah,
that's really kind of where
he's not gonna do that veteran,
right. Well,
yeah.
he'll get there eventually, but that's where the rubber meets the road, right? It's like as these guys start to move past their physical prime, they really get into this mentality of like, let's get every last guaranteed dollar we can get. You saw with CJ McCollum this summer taking the extension. Chris Paul has taken some extensions that have really gone out quite a while. Even LeBron took a 2 year extension with the Lakers when he had to know the Lakers were not going to be in a position to contend for titles, and rather than try to maneuver somewhere else, he just took the guaranteed money. I think all of them in the back of their mind are just worried, well, like what happens if the wheels fall off? I want to be able to make
Yeah.
sure I get that one final payday. And that's really what Draymond is coming up to next summer. It's going to be his last opportunity to make real money. And, there's going to be the Lakers are rumored to be interested. Probably some other teams are going to pop up as well. He does have the option of opting in with the Warriors for one more year if he wants to do that too. So we'll see exactly how he plays it. But, I think for him, it's really about being self-aware and understanding like when is it time to shift roles, when is it time to expect that the money might not be there, and that's very very difficult pills to swallow. I mean, look at Westbrook, John Wall. I mean, some real situations here recently where it's like guys are no longer who they used to be, and they just can't wrap their minds around it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to see how their season unfolds. I've got three other teams here, but maybe let's pick one more just in the interest of time. Who would you like to talk about between Portland, Chicago, and Phoenix in terms of loyalty?
Well, the Phoenix one is a good example because I was at one of their preseason games in Las Vegas against the Lakers, and before the game, Chris Paul's just trying to shoot his free throws, very professionally, like to warm up. And meanwhile, DeAndre Ayton is just chucking underhanded shots from half court, just wasting everybody's time, like flinging them off
Damn.
the backboard. The ball's just flying all over the place. And at some point, after these balls are like flying over the top of Chris Paul, Chris just walks over to the corner of the bench and just sits down by himself in the furthest seat away from everybody else and just kind of like having a moment, feel like maybe he's trying to like meditate or just get himself somewhere else mentally so that he doesn't have to deal with kind of like this young rambunctious energy of all these guys who, just aren't quite as committed to the winning concept as he is. So something feels like it has to give in Phoenix. At the same time, you look at their opener, Chris Paul got benched down the stretch for a lot of that fourth quarter. He was playing really bad, and Monty Williams just said, "You know what? You're a first ballot Hall of Famer. You're an
Mhm.
all-star player, all NBA type guy. You're not getting it done. We're going to go a different direction." And so that sets up a really interesting dynamic where is this still going to be Chris's team? Has this now morphed into Devin Booker's team? Is DeAndre Ayton still unhappy if Chris isn't playing as big of a role? Because it feels like that's maybe one of the sources of tension is just their personality differences.
Right.
Something has to give. And I can't really see them trading Chris because he's on such a big contract. So maybe it's an Ayton trade. But, to me, this core, this entire group is not good enough to win a title. They had their best shot 2 years ago. So in terms of loyalty, I really wouldn't be loyal across the board. I mean, obviously you want to keep Booker and keep Bridges. Those are kind of your two best pieces for the future. But I would be very interested in almost any other trade, around the edges. And look at Jay Crowder. I mean, he understands what time it is. He didn't even show up for training camp, so he knows that. He knows something's amiss.
Well, that's just it, right? Because I mean, I feel like the DeAndre Ayton trade rumors, trade machine's been out there for like some time. And I guess like the right offer just wasn't made. And I'm
Yeah.
just
So
wondering, like, why didn't they move on from him this offseason?
well, it's a really tricky situation when you're in restricted free agency because if somebody else makes the offer and you decide to match, then you can't trade that guy until like basically the middle of the season. I want to say it's like January. So as soon as Indiana came along and was like they kind of like spoiled Phoenix's plans. They were like, all right, here's an offer for Ayton. Then the Suns were kind of paralyzed. They couldn't include Ayton in a Durant trade. So then they didn't have enough to even go out there and get Durant without Ayton. And so they just kind of got stuck. So I think they're playing this waiting game. And I think that those rumors that you're talking about, those are going to pick up heavy as we get closer to the trade deadline, just
Mm,
because, it's one of those things where they're just kind of being put on ice right now because of the NBA's rules.
fair. There's one other NBA topic I want to get into, major topic before we get into the Raptors. That is Victor Wembanyama. So you got to see this guy up close and personal in Vegas. First of all, what was just give me a little bit of insight. What was that like for you to see him in person?
No, it was incredible. I mean, it was the ultimate like NBA fishbowl experience, right? Because you have this guy who's the future of basketball. I mean, he's the best teenage player I've ever seen in my life in person. I'm a little too young to have seen LeBron as a teenager, but I saw KD, Anthony Davis. I mean, pretty much everybody else since then. And this guy's 7'4". He, can shoot from 30 something feet. I mean, he's an unbelievable defensive player even though it doesn't even really seem like he loves playing defense, like he's kind of a gunner. It feels like he's a two guard trapped in like Kristaps Porzingis' body or something like that. But he moves very fluidly, like he's not like this slow ogre type guy. And he's just very polished off the court, very good with the media, speaks fluent English, like is very marketable. So this guy's a total package. But what was so interesting was all 30 NBA teams were there. There was like 200 executives or something along those lines, more than 100 media members, all here to watch this guy for these kind of made for TV showcases on ESPN. But like the casual fan still didn't know who he was. So they're playing this in like a minor league hockey arena, brand new arena, seats like 5,500 or 6,000 people. And the first game was like half full, and then the second game there might have been like 1,000 people there, right? So
Wow.
it's like this guy has completely captured the imagination of like the diehard basketball people, like the industry, but he hasn't reached like the masses quite yet. Whereas you remember when LeBron was in high school, he's selling out college gyms, and all
Yeah.
of his games are televised,
Well,
right?
wasn't he on the cover of like Sports Illustrated
Oh,
in high school? Yeah.
well, yeah, and Victor just, Victor's 18, but he just got his first Slam magazine cover. So it's like he's getting the media attention. He's definitely getting the social media attention,
Hmm.
but like just, he still has to kind of introduce himself to the American audience. So I think that was a big reason why they actually did this trip is they want Victor to kind of, introduce himself to future basketball consumers and all, fans of teams who have a chance to kind of tank for him. But I was just gobsmacked watching him play. Like I had very high expectations, and I've been going to see highly ranked high school players, since I was in high school. Like watching Tyson Chandler when he was in Compton, coming up to Oregon for some high school basketball
Oh, that's
tournaments. Like,
cool.
yeah, and like it's always a good time, and you're always excited to see those guys, but it never pays off like as well as this paid off. Where you're just like, wow, I just watched the future of basketball, and like LeBron's calling him an alien, and
Hmm.
Katie and Giannis are like, get ready, this guy's like about to take over. Like everybody kind of sees how incredible of a prospect this guy is, and so to be there at ground zero was just unbelievable. It's something I'll never forget, and I just hope that he can stay healthy because his legs are really really thin. I mean, from his waist down, like where he would like have his belt, is tall enough to be like most humans. I mean, he's like that tall. I took a picture and put it on Twitter of my shoes, size 13 US, compared to his shoes, which are size 20.5 US, size 55 European, right? And his
Whew.
shoes are almost twice as long as mine, right? So it's just he's in his own galaxy as a basketball anatomy, like let alone a player, and he's got the skills to go with the body. So it's going to be really fun to watch all these different teams angle for positioning for him. I mean, you had Sam Presti, Oklahoma City's GM, sitting courtside. RC Buford was chatting up France's coach. Like everybody's trying to like get their little ins early, just in
Yeah.
case they get him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, when you filmed him ducking to go through the security check-in, did your jaw drop like mine did?
Absolutely, and that was that was so funny because they basically had the same metal detector that you would go through like at the airport, right? That's what they were
Yeah.
using here. And when I walked through it, I don't know about you, I'm 6'3", but like when I walk through it, I don't even think that there's a top to it. Like it's so
Yeah.
high up there that it's like not even really registering that anyone would have to duck. And all of his teammates go through, all of his coaches go through, no one else is ducking. And then Victor is like hunched over at the shoulders, like pulling his entire head down underneath it. And we looked it up, and this metal detector stands almost 7 feet tall, right? And so he's having to
Yeah.
like go way under it to get through it. And yeah, that video went like insanely viral because people were like, "Oh my god, this guy's just different." And you saw him standing next to Rudy Gobert. Even Rudy Gobert himself says, "I feel short next to Victor." I mean, Rudy Gobert's
Yeah.
7'1",
Yeah, he's
and
never felt short a day in his life.
he's
No.
at least 3 inches shorter than Victor. And it's possible Victor's 7'5". There's a lot of like
Mhm.
debates and conspiracies, like how tall is this guy
I
really?
don't know why you would lie about being 7'5" and just list yourself as 7'4".
Well, the big guy, it's funny because big guys love to list themselves at 6'11", right? Like they don't want to be viewed as 7 footers. Like that happens a lot. And that's happened actually throughout time where it's like, why are there so many guys who are
Well, yeah, that was
6'11"?
a
But
big thing with Kevin Durant, like, wasn't it? Yeah.
exactly right. And so I think that 7'3" might be the new 6'11", where it's like, all right, look, like we obviously can't pretend that we're not 7 feet, but like we don't have to like, have everybody constantly asking us, you're 7'5", that's crazy, right? So, but he's only 18. Who knows? Maybe he's still growing. Like who knows
That is
exactly where
wild.
he's going to be on draft night. But he's also got like the French swag, like he was very well dressed. He went to the Lakers game. He had like really nice drip on, really cool sunglasses. Like he dapped up LeBron and AD. Like he's very comfortable in his skin, and a lot of big guys aren't. So I think already he's probably going to win best dressed on draft night. I think next year's
Wow.
draft night and summer league could be like must see TV. Which how often do you say that in October, right?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I didn't even consider the whole fashion element of
Oh
all
yeah.
of this. Yeah, so that's exciting.
I mean,
I
if I was Louis Vuitton or like one of those companies, I would try to have him be like the face of my stuff because I mean, honestly, he has a chance to
mm,
be like, on the generational type athlete level where you're crossing over and, you're kind of getting everybody, get in early, brand him as a representative of France. That's what I'd be
oh my
doing.
god, yeah, that would be huge. I wouldn't be surprised if that actually happens. Um, I mean, obviously there's going to be a massive tanking race this year to get him. There's some obvious teams that are in that tanking race regardless of whether he's in the picture or not.
Right.
Wondering, where do you think would be the best landing spot for Victor?
Well, I have two answers to this. One, where I think it's like the best basketball fit, and then two, which is the most convenient for me, so I can see him play more often, right? So,
Okay.
my first answer is if he goes to the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're obviously all about development. They're all super young. But if you had Chet Holmgren and Victor Wembanyama side by side, you're basically the Monstars Space Jam 3, right? Like
Yeah.
you're just in this galaxy where you've got I don't even know, count it up, 16, 17, 18 feet of wingspan between your two big guys who can both move, can both shoot, can both dribble on the perimeter. Like, it would be so futuristic and it would be wild and it would just be hilarious to be like in Oklahoma City, one of the NBA's smallest markets, middle of nowhere, with this team that's just like so completely like 22nd century. I would just love to see that. And they are very serious about bringing players. Like when they get in, they want those players to advance year after year after year. And for Victor, the challenge is going to be like, all right, well, you're coming in way more advanced than the average teenager, right? But you're going to have to continue to make improvements year after year, fill out your game, make sure you're efficient, add strength, and those kinds of things. And I would love to see him in a organization that's like known for development. Could be the Thunder, could be the Spurs. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, but I would like to see him that kind of environment. Now, selfishly, if he played for the Jazz, he's stepping into Rudy Gobert's old job, right? But, that's like the closest Western Conference team to me here in Los Angeles. That's an easy flight, LA to Salt Lake City. And I think he could, we saw how much success Rudy Gobert had as kind of a one-way player. I mean, he was a good offensive player, but mostly a defensive standout. I think Victor projects as a much more well-rounded two-way impact type of guy. And, that market would certainly embrace him. They have an amazing fan base. And, my home market of Portland, Oregon, if things fall apart for them up there, having Victor, that wouldn't be a bad consolation prize either. But the amazing thing about this year's tankers, they all need centers. Like every single one of the
Mm,
bad teams, except for maybe Orlando, because they got Wendell Carter Jr. Obviously, you're going to move
yeah.
him out of the way if you get Victor, right? But like Houston, San Antonio, like all these teams just have massive holes at center, kind of in terms of long-term prospects. So you've got a lot of GMs who are like, not only is Victor just this incredible player, but like he would instantly fix what ails their team.
Yeah. I think for me, this is a very bizarre answer, but so I've been covering the WNBA all summer as well. I've done so much shitting on Indiana that I just feel like if I
Bill,
say I want him to go to Indiana, that's just good for my own karma. So I feel like that needs to be my answer. But I feel like my real answer is probably the Spurs,
yeah.
where I just feel like that would be in his best interest to be with that kind of organization and to be with Popovich. I mean, I feel like Popovich is not going to retire. He's basically going to be like the queen. He's going to be there till it's truly over. He will not retire. And I just think like the Spurs would be, and it like what a great way to like revive like a very storied franchise also.
Well, yeah, I feel like a lot of Spurs fans that I talk to have already just assumed that they're getting him because it's like, well, we got Duncan,
They're
so we're
very
going to,
cocky.
yeah, yeah. And it's so funny because like so I think they're the worst team in the league, Spurs, but they're only going to have a 14% chance at getting him from the draft lottery, right? And
Mm,
if that's like for the bottom three teams have a 14% chance, right? But then the fourth place team has a 12.5% chance. So you're talking about a difference of 1.5 if you're trying to tank all the way to the bottom to maximize your choice, right? In what other world would an entire like multi-million dollar, really most of these organizations are $1 billion at this point, right? Would they completely steer their entire company and corporate strategy towards trying to increase their odds from like 12.5 to 14% at maybe getting lucky in a lottery
Yeah.
to get a player who's going to change their fortunes. Like the NBA is such a weird corporation if you look at it that way. Like it's such a minuscule possibility that any of these teams are going to be able to get him, even if they try like crazy for the next 6 months to do it. So I would just caution any Spurs fans who are like skipping steps mentally and already buying the Victor jerseys and plotting out like the NBA Finals parade in like 2026. I would say slow your roll. You never know. It could be some team that finishes 12th in the order and just gets really lucky on draft lottery night.
Do you think this is the year that the NBA should legit rig the draft? You know what I mean? Like there's all that talk about like what was it, 84, like the Patrick Ewing one, the frozen envelope. Like, should we just start putting liquid nitrogen on envelopes like today?
Well, where do you want him to land if you rig it? I mean, are you trying to put him in the biggest market? What if I guess the Knicks theoretically could fall into the lottery maybe? I mean, there's a lot of money at stake, but I also think that the NBA is so committed to this idea of parity and small market balance and, trying to have everybody have a chance. And, Kevin Durant can be a star in Oklahoma City, so you can be a star anywhere, that I think that their official company line would be, no, just wherever he ends up is great for business. But I think we can all agree there'd be certain markets that would be, a lot better for business than others in terms of how many viewers you get and how much attention you're getting and everything else. But
I guess what I'm really saying is I don't want to see him in Sacramento. No disrespect to Sacramento.
Yeah.
But it's just, you know what I mean? Like you don't want him to go to a franchise that's proven they cannot build a winning team. I feel like
careful now, because they used to say that about your Raptors, And now look where you guys look how you turn things around. Okay.
We were different. We were different.
Okay. Well,
and in ways that Grizzlies. I can't actually prove. No.
Well, they used to say that about the Vancouver Grizzlies, and then they lost their team, right? Yeah, I'm not exactly predicting Sacramento to have a Toronto-like turnaround. Let's put it that way. I mean, I think their course is probably set, but I hear you. There's definitely better places for him to land than others, and but most of the competitors or the contenders this year for Victor are small market, like largely forgotten franchises, places that superstars have left. James Harden leaves Houston, Dwight Howard leaves Orlando, and they kind of never recover. Like Paul George leaves Indiana. It's like a lot of these teams have sort of felt left behind by the NBA's competitive landscape. And they've concluded like the only way for themselves to compete is to get a big time player in the draft. And so if now we're saying, sorry, we're rigging the draft so you can't get him, then it's just like, well, at that point, you might as well just fold all those franchises. Like, what's the point? So I don't. I'm saying
that wasn't the fun answer, but it's the correct answer.
I know. I'm saying no liquid nitrogen. I'm sorry. I'm shooting down your idea. I'll be on the side of no fun.
Okay, no, that's fair. One of us has to be. But Houston would be fun for him too, actually. Houston could be good. All right, let's move on to our Raptors homer moment here, finally. Okay, so I listen to a lot of, NBA people. I almost use the word pundits, but I'm like, I'm just going to say people. Listen to a lot of NBA stuff, and I feel like a lot of people have the Raptors pegged as a playoff lock, but also a potential first round exit. Not saying that's how I personally feel, but I'm saying that's where I think the majority of NBA journalists kind of view us right now. Want to know if that's what you think and if you see us going any further, and if so, what would that take?
Well, first of all, where are you? How high are you right now? I mean, are you feeling like it's time for another Larry O.B., or what do you think?
No, I think we might have like a second round ceiling. Yeah. Like I'm more, I feel like I have a lot of concerns about our half court offense. I think our defense is spectacular, but it's almost like our defense is so like sprawling and takes up so much energy. And I feel like we're lacking a little bit on the offensive end. And so that is my biggest concern. That, and I just don't want to see another Joel Embiid from 3 to like win in overtime again. Like I definitely don't want to witness that again. And I don't know what we've done to actually prevent a play like that from happening again.
Yeah, that was tough. I remember that series. I was calling Toronto America's team because everybody hates the Sixers, and so it was you guys were gonna finally have your moment, taking Philly out, and you were gonna be embraced by the United States, and it didn't quite happen. I'm actually with you. I think they could win a playoff series, but it does come down to matchups, right? Like if you get Miami and it's just kind of a slugfest series, you got a chance, right? If you get Giannis, I know you guys have matched up pretty well with Giannis in the past, but I think Milwaukee probably has more offense than you do. Similar deal with Boston, right? So I think a lot of it's going to come down to matchups. But I mean, you saw it in opening night against Cleveland. Like you can win that series.
Hmm.
There's no reason why Toronto couldn't beat Cleveland if that's a 4-5, right? I mean, it's certainly possible. So I love what the Raptors are building. I feel like they just need the fast forward button on Scotty Barnes. If you're 3 years from now, are we still saying you don't have enough offense, or are we saying Scotty Barnes is like a do everything forward who's almost kind of like a point guard, who's orchestrating, who's averaging 25 and 6 assists, and he's running an offense with a lot of shooters around him that's working really, really well. I mean, and we could easily be there, in
Hmm.
2026, right?
Hmm.
That's not impossible. Until that happens, though, I'm with you. The creators, Fred's amazing. He gets absolutely everything out of his, journey that he possibly could, but he's not going to be a top shelf postseason guard. Like, there's just going to be other guys who take before him, and a similar deal with Pascal. I mean, just great season last year. I expect another great season this year, but does he have that extra gear that you can go to in the playoffs to be a takeover type guy? I would say probably not. It has to be more of a team collective effort. And I've been waiting for the OG and Anunoby offensive breakout for 4 straight seasons. Still waiting. So maybe that comes at some point, but probably not, right? So it really comes down to Barnes. Barnes is the guy who you're just waiting on him to develop, and it doesn't always take people 6 years to reach their prime in the NBA on offense anymore, right? Like I think he could get there by year 3 or year 4, and the ceiling on the team really rises after that. What I love about Toronto, and I wrote this summer, they're a sleeping giant. Masai, first of all, Masai is the best GM in the NBA, flat out, period.
Yeah.
He just is like he five-tool GM. He could trade away players, he could trade for players, he can draft high, he can draft low, he can sign free agents, big free agents, he can swing blockbusters, he can also just find the right role players to fill out his thing. I mean, he's just got every single thing you could possibly need, charisma, everything. So what's even scarier about that for everybody else is he has all of his draft picks, and he's got two current All-Stars plus his rising All-Star in Barnes. No bad contracts on his salary cap, none, and a whole bunch of flexible contracts he can trade, right? So if somebody becomes available, where it's like this guy could be the right sidekick for Scotty, Masai has every asset he would need to go make that trade and bring that guy in, right? And so I think
Hmm.
he's actually even in a better spot than he was when he traded for Kawhi in terms of assets, in terms of roster and everything else, because the main guys are a little bit younger. He has all these picks. And so I think, you fast forward a couple years, whether that's like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, I'm sure there's going to be people who talk about that because he's Canadian, or even if it's just
Yeah.
somebody else who comes up on their second contract and is looking for a new home, Masai is going to be ready to pounce. And I think people should not sleep on him. Like if we're saying like the next 5 years, would you rather be Miami or Toronto or Philly or Brooklyn? I would rather be Toronto than any of those other teams.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you talked a little bit about OG. I feel like he's the player that I'm the most intrigued by this season. You said like, we keep waiting for him to have that like breakout year. And is it this year? You said you're still waiting. He has had some weird and odd kind of injury luck in his career as well. But I feel like I still believe in OG, but I also feel like because we've had this amazing development system with like Fred and Pascal, that maybe the expectations on him are not fair or realistic either. I feel like who he is this season is like who he's going to be. And I feel like as a fan, I just want to come to a place of acceptance, if that makes sense. But I'm still intrigued to see what it's going to be.
No, it's a great take. I mean, Pascal is so much better than people thought when he came out. Fred wasn't thought to be anything, and he's an all-star. He, almost led the league in minutes last year. OG is better than people thought he was going to be when he came out. I mean,
Hmm.
he's already a developmental success story. I just feel like when you have those early, a couple of years ago, it felt like, wow, this guy could really ramp up and become more on offense. And it seems like, well, it's actually, he's kind of a 3 and D plus, right? Where he's going to give you a little bit more than just being a 3 and D. But that's okay too. I mean, what I love about Toronto is they spread the wealth. They have a whole bunch of different guys who can contribute. That's probably going to change as Scotty gets better and better. But for right now, like having this very egalitarian offense where everybody gets a chance, that keeps them invested defensively. I mean, you can only play this
Right.
high energy, let's force turnovers, let's run around the court and try to exhaust our opponents. You can only play that style if everybody's engaged and feeling happy on the other end, right? Like if you only have two scorers, not everyone's going to want to play defense. So I love what Nick Nurse has created up there. I love what Masai. Masai just wants every athlete. What's the new center's name they've got? The real tall, skinny guy. I mean, it's just like a perfect, like straight out of central. Is that Coloco? I think.
Yeah, it's Coloco.
Straight out of central casting for Raptors, right? It's just like, oh yeah, of course, of course, that guy's a Raptor, And Masai has a type, and I just love Masai's type.
Yeah, Masai absolutely has a type. Speaking of types, maybe it's time for the Nick Nurse hottie highlight of the week. Maybe it's time for my type. It's the return of this beloved segment, maybe by me only, but I always end every episode with this. Earlier this week, Nick Nurse had a very fun charity benefit event for his Nick Nurse Foundation. He had a lot of musical guests, including Neo. Shout out to Neo, Miss Independent, right? And so
probably seen him at a halftime show. I seriously, I'm pretty sure I have. Yeah.
Yeah. Last year for the season opener, the Raptors had Lupe Fiasco perform, and this year just nobody. They just fully cut that out of the budget. I don't know why, but Lupe Fiasco was fun. Yeah, but in that case, I just wanted to throw you a very fun, silly question. And that is, if you were having a charity benefit, who would be your musical guest, Ben?
So I'm going to come with a little bit of a curveball answer on this one for you. Hologram Tupac. And I don't understand exactly. So when did Hologram Tupac first exist? Was Coachella like 5 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So in my mind, when that happened, I was like, well, holograms are just here. It's sort of like robots or AI or whatever. Like, we're just going to have hologram music at everything now, and it's going to be awesome. I still have not been to an event that had a hologram music. Like, there's not been a halftime show that had a hologram or whatever. Like, it just hasn't spread enough. I don't know if the technology is just like too expensive or what the deal is, but hologram guys, step it up. We need to be able to have these. Like you should be able to have almost anyone you want, right? Like what's the limiting factor here besides like, human creativity? I think you should be able, like my dad loves Bob Dylan. He's still going to Bob Dylan concerts. Like, can we get hologram Bob Dylan from 1965, right? Or whatever?
Yeah, I was going to say you could get holograms of people who are still alive. 100%. Right? They don't have to be deceased. And maybe that's less expensive than getting the real thing.
And have them play side by side. Here's current, music act. Here's the hologram version of them from 25 years ago.
That reminds me of like
unreal.
That reminds me of like the wax statues, when like a celebrity goes and they visit their own wax statue. Oh my God.
Well, can you imagine like Snoop Dogg, like just like a early 90s version of Snoop Dogg hologram, and then real Snoop Dogg, like he's really had a nice journey. Young Jay-Z, current Jay-Z, Beyonce, seeing 20 years ago. I think it would be awesome. And I just encourage the hologram industry to try to expand, like this needs to become like a normalized thing. We don't need the 3D goggles. We don't really need anything else. We just need to be able to enjoy our favorite all-time musical acts in the hologram form.
Oh my God. That's incredible. Maybe I could get a hologram Nick Nurse to show up to my events.
Boom. See, that's what I'm saying.
I don't even have to book the real guy.
Well, like Cameo.
I feel like Nick would come.
Well, so he'd probably give you a cameo. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Nick Nurse is on Cameo because he has his own like hats with his initials on them, right? So he's probably on Cameo.
Yeah, well, he sold his hats too. Like you could buy them.
Oh, yeah. Well, so he's got fan outreach is my point. And so I think the next step is if he's on Cameo, I think Cameo is trying to do the same thing as the hologram people. They're trying to bring you closer to your favorite celebrities. So I feel like this is a natural, just, developmental or a developmental celebrity business model where it's like, all right, well, you can get the video on your phone, right? But imagine if you can get a hologram video on your phone, right? That'd be even better. God. So like if it's your birthday and I send you hologram Nick Nurse playing his guitar and like singing your favorite song, isn't that the greatest birthday present ever? Aren't you just like in my debt for the rest of your life? Like that's incredible. And how much would that be worth to you? $3,000,
Oh
$10,000,
my
like
God.
more than the typical cameo videos. I'm just saying, like they really need to step this up here. There's a lot of money to be made.
Yeah, I think the celebrity that would make the most money off of that is The Rock. I feel like everyone would want The Rock at their birthday and he would just like cash in, you know?
100, limitless financial opportunities for all these
Wow.
celebrities.
I
Bring
mean,
it, you know.
honestly, you've just like you've created a whole new lane here. You did give
Well,
me a
there,
curveball, but also this is just like a really good business venture. You're closer to Silicon Valley than anybody else I know. So I feel like you're the one to make that happen.
yeah, I don't understand why all the NBA celebrities are messing around with pickleball. Like they're all buying pickleball teams. This is the real future here. Okay, so let's get back on track and make this thing happen. But who is your musical act? Like who is what was your answer to this question?
I mean, my all-timer, the one that I'm the most obsessed with is Janet Jackson. That's just like a
Okay,
loyalty thing from childhood. I absolutely love Janet Jackson. Typically, I just love a lot of like female pop R&B divas. So, you know, big on Beyonce, Lizzo, Lady Gaga. I don't try to be pretentious and cool about my taste in music. I love my divas, and that's where I exist
so
musically.
young Whitney Houston hologram.
Oh yeah.
Boom,
Oh my
boom.
God.
I
I'm
mean,
not even as a Canadian, if I saw a hologram of Whitney Houston singing the Star Spangled Banner, I would cry. And
that's what I'm saying.
that's not even my anthem.
I am right there with you. I'm not sure if I would cry, but I would probably choke back some tears.
Yeah, yeah,
And
you know.
yeah, yeah, I think it's a great idea.
It's the
Let's just
best
get,
it's the best version of that ever.
yeah.
I don't know if that's a hot take, but in my opinion, it's the best version of that ever.
Well, the Redeem Team documentary that came out recently was really pushing the Marvin Gaye Star Spangled Banner hard. I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's like
Yeah.
very soulful. And I want to say Coach K, of all people, played it for the team to like get them ramped up before like their big
So
Olympic
much
journey.
patriotism was used. They're like bringing in guys from the army. I mean, it was like, yeah, it was pretty wild. That was fun. That was a nice nostalgic trip. That doc, I did appreciate it.
Yeah, and let me just say, like having covered USA basketball like off and on, not at every tournament, but like a lot of their warm-ups in Vegas and stuff, they're dead serious about that. It's like service is like the first word that comes out of Jerry Colangelo's mouth every time. Coach K was always about that. Loyalty, duty, honor, like every speech that these guys gave, like to the media,
Wow.
always was like focusing on that stuff. And it was a little bit like jarring coming from the NBA where like those things aren't really focused, to this having the same players, but like a completely different messaging. But it worked for them. I mean, they got back on the gold medal track, and that documentary was pretty good. It wasn't great, but it was pretty good. I enjoyed it, and I'm ready for them to make the saddest documentary of all time, which is documenting the USA basketball gold medal at Tokyo, where I was one of like 200 people in the empty arena watching them, beat all these teams that they should be beating by 40 and like kind of struggling through it and
Yeah.
very very relieved to have the whole thing accomplished when it was over. But we'll see if they ever put that one on
Well,
Netflix.
if they do, they should interview you for it.
I'm waiting. They gave me a quick interview for the Bubble doc. I don't know when that one's ever coming out, but I did sit
Oh,
for
yeah,
that.
that's exciting.
I did sit for that when we were in the bubble. I think I spent like half the interview trying to plug my book, so I'm not sure how well that went for them. Probably not going to make the director's cut, but we'll see. We'll see.
Ben, thank you so much for joining me on this very special season debut episode. Let all our listeners know where they can find you on the internets.
Yeah, WashingtonPost.com/sports for all my writing. I've got a weekly newsletter, so you can sign up there. I'm on Twitter at Ben Golliver, on Instagram at Ben.Golliver. And I do a podcast twice a week called The Greatest of All Talk. You can find that at greatestofalltalk.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and good luck to your Raptors.
Thank you.